Meanwhile, in our universe.
Alright, that is the VMP video out of the way. I wonder what weapon I should cover next. Oh, what's this? Oh, a couple of the big YouTubers have made their weapon tier lists. Yeah, sure, I'll check it out. How bad can it be?
The Bruen, on the other hand, is just so bad.
I don't like where this is going.
Nobody ever used this after it was released. You know what? It's so bad I'm putting it in an F.
I would say like this is like, people are gonna roast me for this, but I feel like it's better than the Type 19. It's better than the Type 19.
When you hear the word LMG, the first thing that usually come to mind is a weapon with high ammo capacity, but slow mobility and handling. This description is generally true for most of the LMGs. These weapons encourage a more passive playstyle, which is one that most players aren't particularly fond of. But there are a small handful of them that break this rule, blurring the line between LMG and assault rifle. In this video, I'll be focusing on one of these LMGs in particular, which just so happens to be one of the most forgotten weapons in the game. In fact, I'm pretty sure some of you don't even know that this weapon exists. Now, this is for a pretty good reason. It wasn't exactly a great weapon upon release, but thanks to a much needed buff this season, it is actually in a really good state right now, which is why I'll be speaking in defense of the Bruen MK9. When you take a look at the Bruen from a statistical point of view, you'll notice that it's actually pretty comparable to guns like the XM4 and the Type 19, the most obvious similarity being the time to kill, as all three weapons share the exact same time to kill of 240 milliseconds. Fast but not an insta-kill unlike some of the other meta weapons. It even shares the ability to 3-tap with just one headshot for an incredibly fast time to kill. But where the Bruen stands out here is the range. It features the longest 4-tap range out of the three weapons at 38 meters. This is very similar to the Type 19 when built for max range, so naturally that brings up the question, why not just use that? Well, that is because the Bruen is straight up better in quite a few areas. For starters, the Bruen has noticeably better hitboxes since it has a stomach multiplier which is absent on the Type 19. So in terms of 4-tap consistency, the Bruen sits right in between the Type 19 and the XM4, which means that its potential 4-tap range is by no means difficult to achieve. Another factor to consider is mobility and handling. When you put all of the range boosting attachments on the Type 19, you'll end up with a weapon that has extremely slow mobility and handling. This is pretty much LMG territory except without the benefits of one. The Bruen has no such problem. Its ADS time is actually on the faster side for assault rifles, not much slower than the XM4. Its overall mobility is also quite a bit faster than the max range Type 19, although its sprint speed is still a bit slower than average. Its BSA is more than sufficient for your practical engagements in standard multiplayer, and its recoil is moderate but controllable. The first 15 or so shots will kick upwards into the right before switching to the left. This pattern is not much different from guns like the Holger, and because it kicks at a fixed rate, it is actually quite easy to beam at range once you find the exact speed to pull down. Magazine capacity is also larger than the other two assault rifles at 60, allowing you to sustain in gunfights for a bit longer. As a trade-off, you do have a slower reload time, especially if you're reloading from empty, so it's important to make sure that you have at least one round in the magazine before reloading, since its tactical reload time is only barely slower than the XM4's. And let's not forget, this thing is an LMG, which means that the Bruen still retains its LMG perks, despite being converted into an assault rifle. The main one being the Disable perk. For those who don't know, Disable is a perk that applies a significant movement speed debuff on hit for 2 seconds. This is a pretty weak perk on assault rifles since you have to hit the legs for the debuff to apply, but on LMGs, this debuff applies no matter where you hit on the body. So when you think about it, the Bruen is effectively an assault rifle with a guaranteed slow on hit, which makes tracking targets much easier and is a great counter to enemies who tend to move around a lot. The Bruen also features high bullet impact, inflicting much more flinch than assault rifles, so guns like the USS-9 and sniper rifles will have a harder time trying to challenge you at range. The Bruen's penetration values are higher than assault rifles as well, It's not quite as good as conventional LMG since it can't penetrate heavy material, but it is enough to require one less shot to kill through walls compared to the Type 19 and XM4. Since I mentioned the Bruen being an LMG, it naturally brings up the question if it's still good as a more conventional LMG. So now, I'll be comparing the Bruen, built as a proper LMG this time, against the most popular LMG as of now, the MG42. Time to kill wise, the Bruen is very similar to the MG42. Now it doesn't have the blistering fast fire rate, so missed shots are more punishing. But in return, the Bruen's time to kill extends to nearly double the range of the MG42, making it much stronger at mid-range. One of the biggest advantages of the MG42 is the fact that it has much faster ADS time compared to most conventional LMGs, meaning that it doesn't struggle quite as much against assault rifles and LMGs in terms of reaction time. The Bruen features pretty much the same ADS time, while also having some of the best mobility out of all the conventional LMGs. Obviously, you're not going to move around as fast as assault rifles, but as far as LMGs are concerned, you won't be lagging behind as much. The final advantage of the Bruen is ammo capacity. The Bruen features a colossal belt size of 200 rounds, and because the Bruen requires less shots to kill, you end up with a weapon that can kill twice as many players before having to reload. So even if it does take several business days to reload, you'll usually die before you even need to, considering how much ammo it has. So with all those great upsides in mind, some of you guys will be asking, why isn't this gun being used more often? What are the downsides of the Bruen? The first drawback is the hit flinch, which is quite high regardless of if you build it as an assault rifle or as an LMG. So even though you can inflict high hit flinch, you'll also be taking quite a bit of hit flinch yourself, which makes challenging weapons with higher bullet impact much more challenging. The other drawback is the more significant one. This gun has jiggle physics, and not the good kind. While the actual recoil is fairly manageable, the gun model itself tends to shake a lot. And even if you're using an optic, which I hope you do since the iron sights are horrendous, the reticle still bounces quite a bit. This makes the weapon feel a lot less accurate than it actually is. And added with the fact that it's not a brain dead or insta-kill weapon unlike some of the other meta options, yeah, you can see why this isn't the most popular. But even with these downsides, the Bruen is still a pretty strong weapon overall. As an assault rifle, it's kinda like a more range-focused version of the XM4 with some additional utility. And as an LMG, it's a really good option for those who want a faster handling traditional LMG that isn't the MG42. As for how I would buff this gun, the Bruen is already a very strong weapon statistically, so it doesn't need any major changes. The only buff I would suggest is a reduction to the visual recoil to match some of the other weapons, so it will be a bit more comfortable to use. So, as previously mentioned, we have two main builds for the Bruen MK9. The first one is the Flex Assault Rifle build. Start with the 60 round mags and no stock for mobility and handling, tactical suppressor for concealment, disable for the slow and hit, and an optic of preference for better visibility. If you don't mind the iron sights or have a good blueprint, you can use the granulated grip tape instead for better BSA. As for the LMG build, simply replace the 60 round mags with the 200 round belt. You can also swap disable with FMJ for better wall bangs or sleight of hand if you really can't stand the LMG reload time. For those who are about to comment, yes, there is no barrel or mono suppressor for both of these builds. The range that I mentioned earlier is without any range boosting attachments. 38 meters of 4-tap range is more than enough for your standard multiplayer engagement, so you can save an attachment slot for something else and keep the faster ADS time. And that covers everything there is to know about the Bruen MK9. Personally, I'm not the best with most LMGs since they're usually too slow for me. Can you tell I mostly play assault rifles? So I end up preferring the AR type LMGs, and the Bruen is the best one. I get to enjoy the benefits of an LMG while not having to deal with the slow handling and mobility typically associated with one. And even when built as a proper LMG, it's still not that slow, so I could work with it surprisingly well, and I found it pretty fun to use, especially with the 200 rounds. But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so what do you guys think about the Bruen MK9? Do you think you'll be giving it another shot after watching this video? And for those who have tried it, do you prefer it as an assault rifle or an LMG? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you found the video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.